Captain Taman stood on the bridge of his ship, the stellar wind watching the stars through the large front window. He had been flying through space for 22 years. In all that time, he had never seen anything that surprised him. Every route was mapped. Every danger was known. Every shortcut was in the computer files. His ship was not the biggest or the fastest, but it was reliable. The crew was small but good. DeYoung sat at the pilot controls, his forearms moving smoothly over the buttons and screens. Nari worked at the communication station, her large eyes focused on the incoming messages. Both of them had flown with Taman for over 10 years. "Captain," Nari called out, her voice making the soft, clicking sounds of her species. "We have a new job offer. It pays very well." Taman walked over to look at the message on her screen. The pay was indeed very good. Almost too good. "What do they want us to deliver?" he asked. "Medical supplies," Nari replied. "Emergency medicines for a colony world. The destination is Kepler 442 system." Taman nodded.
Medical runs usually paid well because they were urgent.
DeYoung, plot a course to Kepler 442. Let me know how long it will take. DeYoung's 4 hands worked quickly over his controls. Then he stopped. His face showed confusion. "Captain, something is wrong with the navigation computer." "What kind of wrong?" Taman asked, walking over to look at DeYoung's screen. "The computer cannot plot a complete route. It stops calculating at Sector 7 Alpha. After that, it shows nothing." Taman frowned. In 30 years of space travel, he had never heard of a navigation computer failing to plot a route. "Run the calculation again." DeYoung tried 3 more times. Each time, the result was the same. The route stopped at Sector 7 Alpha. "Captain," DeYoung said slowly, "the computer shows a message I have never seen before." "What does it say?" "Route calculation incomplete. Human-governed space detected. Mapping algorithms insufficient." The bridge became very quiet. Taman stared at the screen. Nari stopped clicking at her station and turned to look at them. In all of known space, every species followed certain rules about navigation. The Zephyrians could bend space and time, but they did it in patterns that could be predicted and mapped. The Vortani created wormholes, but they built them in stable networks that never changed. Even the wild nebula dancers, who seemed to move randomly through space, actually followed paths that could be calculated by smart computers. But humans? Taman had heard stories about humans, of course. They were a young species that had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were known for being strange and unpredictable, but he had never heard that their space could not be mapped. "This must be an error," Taman said finally. "Every route can be mapped. That is how space travel works." DeYoung looked at his screens again. "Captain, I am checking the star charts. The Kepler 442 system is definitely in human space. It has been under human control for 15 years. And our navigation computer cannot plot a route through human space?" "No, sir. It can get us to the edge of their territory, but after that..." DeYoung made a gesture with all 4 hands that meant unknown in his culture. Nari turned back to her communication station. "Captain, should I tell the client that we cannot take the job?" Taman thought about this. The pay for this job was enough to keep his ship running for 6 months. But more than that, he was curious. How could any part of space be unmappable? It went against everything he knew about navigation. "No," he said finally. "Tell them we accept the job. We will find a way to deliver their medicines." DeYoung's 4 eyes went wide. "Captain, how can we navigate through space that cannot be mapped?" "Every space can be mapped, DeYoung. Humans are young. Maybe they just have not learned how to do it properly yet. We will show them." Nari sent the acceptance message to the client. Within minutes, they received the cargo details and delivery instructions. The medicines were already waiting at the nearest space station. They had 5 days to make the delivery. As the stellar wind moved toward the pickup point, Taman studied everything he could find about humans and their territory. What he read made him even more confused. Human ships seemed to appear and disappear from sensors without warning. They took routes that made no sense according to standard navigation principles. Some reports said that human pilots could navigate through dangerous areas that would trap other ships for days, but the strangest thing was that no 2 human ships ever seemed to take the same route between the same 2 points. It was as if they made up their paths as they went along. "This is impossible," Taman muttered, reading another report about human navigation methods. "You cannot just make up a route through space. There are gravitational fields, radiation zones, asteroid belts. You need computers to calculate safe paths. Du Young looked over at the reports. Maybe humans have very advanced computers that work differently than ours? Maybe, Taemin said, but he did not sound convinced. They picked up the medical supplies without any problems. The cargo was properly packaged and labeled. Nothing unusual there. But as they approached Sector 7 Alpha, the edge of human space, Taemin felt nervous for the first time in years. "Captain," Nari announced, "I am detecting human patrol ships ahead. They are asking us to state our business. Tell them we have medical supplies for Kepler 442. Ask for navigation assistance." Nari sent the message. The reply came back quickly, and when she read it, her large eyes blinked in surprise. "Captain, they say they will send a guide ship to escort us, but they warn that the route may be interesting is the word they used." Taemin did not like the sound of that. In his experience, when someone said a space route was interesting, it usually meant dangerous. But they had made a commitment to deliver the medicines. People on Kepler 442 were depending on them. "Tell the humans we accept their escort." As they waited for the guide ship to arrive, Taemin looked out at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness was human space, the first region in the galaxy that could not be properly mapped. Soon he would find out why. The human escort ship appeared on their sensors like a ghost. One moment there was empty space, and the next moment a small vessel was floating nearby. Taemin stared at his detection screens in confusion. His sensors had not seen the ship approach. How did they do that? Du Young asked, his 4 hands checking the sensor controls. "Our equipment is working perfectly, but we never saw them coming." "Unknown," Taemin replied, studying the human ship through the window. It looked old and patched in many places. Parts of it seemed to be made from different types of metal, as if the crew had repaired it with whatever they could find. This was not what he expected from a patrol vessel. Nari received a communication signal. "Captain, the human ship is calling us. They want to talk." "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The man was young, with short dark hair and a relaxed smile that seemed out of place for a military officer. Behind him, Taemin could see a bridge that looked more like a workshop than a command center. Tools hung from hooks on the walls, and several crew members seemed to be eating while they worked. "Greetings," the human said in perfect galactic common language. "I am Captain Hyunwoo of the Lucky Strike. We understand you need safe passage to Kepler 442. "Yes," Taemin replied formally. "I am Captain Taemin of the merchant vessel Stellar Wind. We carry medical supplies for emergency delivery. We request standard navigation data for the safest route." Hyunwoo laughed, which surprised Taemin. Military officers did not usually laugh during official communications. "Navigation data? Oh, friend, you have been flying in mapped space too long. We do not have navigation data. We just figure it out as we go." Taemin felt his scales shift color with confusion. "You figure it out? But how do you avoid dangers? How do you plot efficient courses?" "Experience," Hyunwoo said with a shrug. "We have been flying these routes for years. We know where things are, mostly. Follow us and stay close. Fair warning, though. We might take a scenic route through that asteroid field over there. Ji-hoon here thinks he saw something interesting in there yesterday." A younger human appeared on the screen behind Hyunwoo. "Captain, I'm pretty sure I saw a crystal formation that might be valuable. It will only add an hour to the trip." Taemin's crew looked at each other in shock. Du Young made a gesture that meant these beings are insane in his culture. Flying through asteroid fields was dangerous enough when you had proper navigation computers calculating safe paths. Flying through them to look for pretty crystals was beyond reckless. "Captain Hyunwoo," Taemin said carefully, "perhaps there is a safer route. My crew is not experienced with scenic navigation." Hyunwoo's smile grew wider. "Do not worry, friend. We will take good care of you. My crew has never lost a ship we were escorting. Well, except for that one time, but that was not really our fault." The other captain decided to try flying through a solar flare on his own. Before Taemin could respond, the Lucky Strike began moving toward the asteroid field. Taemin had no choice but to follow. What happened next was the most terrifying hour of Taemin's life. The human ship moved through the asteroids like it was dancing. It would suddenly dive under a spinning rock, then twist around another, then shoot through a gap so narrow that Taemin was sure they would crash. The humans never seemed to slow down or hesitate. They flew as if they knew exactly where every asteroid would be at every moment. But that was impossible. Asteroids moved in complex patterns affected by gravity, solar wind, and magnetic fields. No computer could predict their exact positions without constant updates. Yet the humans navigated through them as easily as Taemin would fly through empty space. "Captain," Du Young said in a tight voice, "our navigation computer is showing red warnings everywhere. It says we are flying into certain death." "I can see that," Taemin replied, watching a house-sized rock spin past their window so close he could see scratches on its surface. "Keep following them. They seem to know what they are doing." But did they? The human ship suddenly turned straight toward what looked like a solid wall of asteroids. Taemin was about to call a warning when the lucky strike slipped through a gap he had not even seen. The gap was so narrow that both ships had to turn sideways to fit through. On the other side was the crystal formation Ji-hoon had mentioned. It was beautiful. A cluster of natural crystals growing from a large asteroid, glowing with their own inner light. But they were not alone here. 3 other asteroids floated nearby, and all of them were moving in a slow, complex dance around each other. "Fascinating," Hyunwoo's voice came over the radio. "The gravitational interaction is creating a stable pocket. This formation could last for years." While the humans studied the crystals, Taemin watched his navigation computer struggle to understand their current position. The computer kept showing error messages. It could not figure out how they had gotten here, and it could not calculate a safe way out. But the humans seemed unconcerned. After 10 minutes of admiring the crystals, Hyunwoo announced that it was time to continue their journey. The exit from the asteroid field was even more frightening than the entrance. The lucky strike led them through a series of turns and climbs that defied every rule of safe navigation. At one point, they flew so close to a massive rotating asteroid that Taemin could feel the gravitational pull affecting his ship's systems. When they finally emerged into open space, Taemin's crew sat in stunned silence. "Captain," Nari said finally, "I have never seen anything like that. How do they navigate without computers?" "I do not know," Taemin admitted. "It should be impossible." Hyunwoo's voice came over the radio again. "Nice flying back there, Stellar Wind. You kept up better than most newcomers. Ready for the next part of the journey?" Taemin looked ahead and saw what the human captain was talking about. In front of them was a nebula, a huge cloud of gas and dust that stretched for millions of kilometers. Nebulas were dangerous because they blocked sensors and communication systems. Standard procedure was to go around them, even if it took days longer. "We are going through the nebula?" Taemin asked. "Of course," Hyunwoo replied. "Going around would take 3 days. Through the middle, we can reach Kepler 442 by tomorrow morning. Just stay close and trust us." As they entered the nebula, Taemin's sensors began failing one by one. Soon he could barely see the lucky strike ahead of them, even though it was less than a kilometer away. He had to rely completely on the humans to guide them through the dangerous cloud. But somehow they made it. When they emerged on the other side, Taemin realized that everything he thought he knew about space navigation was wrong. The human way station looked nothing like any space station Taemin had ever seen. Instead of the clean, geometric designs favored by most species, this station seemed to grow organically from a large asteroid. Parts had been added over time, creating a structure that looked more like a living thing than a building. "Welcome to Crossroads Station," Hyunwoo announced as they approached. "Best food and fuel in 3 sectors. And if you want to understand how we navigate out here, Somin is the person to talk to." Taemin docked his ship carefully. Even the docking procedure was different here. Instead of automated guidance systems, human controllers talked them through the process step by step, adjusting for conditions in real time. It was more personal, but somehow felt safer than the computer-controlled systems he was used to. Inside the station, Taemin was surprised by how comfortable it felt. The corridors were wider than necessary, with viewing windows that showed the stars outside. Plants grew in containers along the walls, making the air smell fresh and clean. People from many different species walked around freely, talking and laughing together. "You must be Captain Taemin," a voice said behind him. He turned to see a human woman approaching. She was older than Hyunwoo, with gray streaks in her black hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. "I am So-min, the senior navigator here. Hyunwoo said you had questions about how we find our way through space." "I do," Taemin replied. "What I have seen today challenges everything I know about navigation. Your methods seem impossible, yet they work." So-min smiled. "Walk with me. I will show you something." She led him through the station to a large room filled with displays showing star charts, sensor readings, and ship movements. But these charts looked different from the ones Taemin was used to. They were constantly changing, with new information appearing and old data fading away. "This is our navigation center," Somin explained. "But as you can see, we do not keep permanent maps." "Why not?" Taemin asked, studying the shifting displays. "Maps are the foundation of safe navigation, are they?" Somin touched a control and one of the displays zoomed in on a nearby star system. "Tell me, Captain, when was the last time you updated your navigation database?" Taemin thought about it. 6 months ago. We downloaded the latest charts from the Galactic Navigation Authority. And those charts were based on surveys that were how old? The standard survey cycle is every 5 years for most systems. Somin nodded. "So your maps show what space looked like 5 years ago, updated 6 months ago. But space is not static, Captain. Stars move. Asteroids change their orbits. New phenomena appear all the time. Solar flares, gravitational anomalies, quantum storms. They come and go constantly." She touched another control, and the display showed a route through a nearby system. 3 months ago, this was considered a safe passage. Ships used it regularly. But then a rogue planet passed through the system, disrupting the gravitational fields. Now it is a death trap. But the official charts will not be updated for another year. Taemin stared at the display. "But how do you know about these changes?" "We listen," Somin replied simply. "Every ship that passes through reports what they find. Every pilot shares their experiences. We build our understanding of space from thousands of real observations, not from old survey data." She led him to another display that showed ship movements in real time. "Watch this. Here comes a trader from the Vegan colonies. See how he adjusts his course as he approaches that nebula? Yesterday, our sensors detected new electromagnetic activity in that area. The pilot received the warning and changed his route accordingly. But how do you coordinate all of this information? How do you make sure every ship knows about every danger?" Somin pointed to a group of humans working at communication stations. "We talk to each other constantly. Every human ship is connected to our communication network. When someone finds a new shortcut, everyone learns about it within hours. When someone encounters a new danger, warnings go out immediately." Taemin watched the humans working. They were not just reading reports. They were having conversations. Pilots shared stories about their journeys. Navigators discussed the best ways to handle different types of space weather. Engineers explained how to modify ships for better performance in unusual conditions. "This is fascinating," Taemin said. "But it still does not explain how you navigate through areas where sensors fail. Like that nebula we flew through." Somin's eyes lit up. Now you are asking the right question. Come with me." She led him to a smaller room where a young human woman was sitting in a chair surrounded by sensor equipment. The woman's eyes were closed and her hands rested on controls that seemed to respond to her slightest touch. "This is Jinai," Somin explained quietly. "She is practicing spatial awareness techniques. Watch." On a screen nearby, Taemin could see a simulation of a ship flying through an asteroid field. But the pilot, Jinai, was not looking at any displays. Her eyes remained closed as she guided the simulated ship through the dangerous area, using only the controls under her hands. "How is she doing that?" Taemin whispered. "She feels the space around her," Somin replied. "Humans have always been good at this. Your species evolved with excellent sensors, so you learned to depend on them. But humans developed on a world where we had to navigate using instinct and intuition. We learned to feel changes in pressure, to sense movement through vibration, to read patterns in chaos." Jinai opened her eyes and smiled at them. "The trick is not to think too hard about it," she said. "When you try to calculate everything, you miss the subtle signals your body is picking up. Gravitational changes affect your inner ear. Electromagnetic fields create tiny sensations on your skin. Your brain processes thousands of small inputs without you realizing it." Taemin shook his head in amazement. "But surely this only works for experienced pilots. What about new navigators?" "We train them," Somin said. "Not with computers and charts, but with mentors and practice. Each new navigator spends months flying with experienced crews, learning to read space the way our ancestors learned to read weather patterns and ocean currents." A soft alarm sounded through the station. Somin looked at a nearby display and frowned. "We have a problem. There is a distress signal from the Helix Nebula. A ship is trapped in there." Taemin knew about the Helix Nebula. It was a dangerous area filled with ionized gas that blocked all sensors and communications. Any ship that entered it was essentially blind and deaf. Standard rescue procedures required assembling a fleet of ships with specialized equipment, and even then, rescue missions often took weeks to plan and execute. "How long will it take to organize a rescue mission?" Taemin asked. Somin was already moving toward the docking bay. "We leave in 10 minutes. Want to come along and see how we handle the impossible?" Taemin followed her, his mind reeling. 10 minutes? How could they mount a rescue mission in 10 minutes? But as he watched the humans prepare for departure, he began to understand. They were not following a detailed plan created by committees and computers. They were responding with the same instinctive adaptability that had gotten him safely through the asteroid field. The Lucky Strike launched from Crossroads Station with only 3 crew members aboard: Hyunwoo, Jin-A, and a human engineer named Bo-Ram. Taemin had expected a larger rescue ship with specialized equipment, but the humans seemed confident that their small vessel could handle the mission. "Captain," Taemin said as they approached the Helix Nebula, "how do you plan to find the stranded ship? Our long-range sensors cannot penetrate that cloud." Hyunwoo was studying readings on his navigation display, but the information looked nothing like standard sensor data. Instead of clean lines and precise measurements, the screen showed shifting patterns of color and movement that seemed almost artistic. "We start with what we know," Hyunwoo explained. The distress signal came from Sector 7 of the nebula. The ship was a Galactic Federation explorer vessel called the Deep Survey. They were conducting scientific research on the nebula's interior structure. "But how do we navigate to Sector 7 when our instruments will not work inside the nebula?" Ginny turned from her pilot station. "The same way ancient sailors found islands in thick fog. We use everything except our eyes." As they entered the outer edge of the nebula, Taemin watched his ship's sensors begin to fail one by one. Communication systems filled with static. Navigation computers showed error messages. The stars outside disappeared behind thick clouds of ionized gas that glowed with an eerie blue light. But the humans did not seem worried. Bo-Ram was taking readings with handheld instruments that looked nothing like standard equipment. Some appeared to be homemade devices built from spare parts. Jin-A had her hands on the flight controls, but she was flying with her eyes closed, feeling her way through the nebula like a blind person navigating a familiar room. "There," Bo-Ram announced, pointing to one of his strange instruments. "I am detecting quantum resonance patterns from that direction. Artificial origin, definitely Federation technology. How can you detect that?" Taemin asked, looking at the device. It seemed to be built from navigation sensors, communication equipment, and what looked like kitchen utensils. Bo-Ram grinned. "Federation ships use quantum entanglement for their faster-than-light communication systems. Even when the main transmitters are down, there are always tiny quantum leaks. This device amplifies those signals until we can track them." "You built a quantum tracker from spare parts?" "Last month," Bo-Ram replied proudly. "I was bored and had some extra equipment lying around. It is not as precise as proper scientific instruments, but it works well enough for rescue missions." Jin-A suddenly changed course, steering them around what looked like empty space. "Gravitational eddy coming up," she announced. "These things can spin a ship around for hours if you get caught in one." Taemin could not see or sense anything unusual, but he had learned to trust the human's abilities. "How do you detect gravitational eddies without proper sensors?" "Feel it through the ship," Jin-A replied, her hands making tiny adjustments to the controls. When space is curved by gravity, it affects how the ship responds to steering. The hull also makes different sounds when gravitational fields change around it. They flew deeper into the nebula, following Bo-Ram's quantum tracker and Jin-A's intuitive navigation. The journey that should have been impossible with failed sensors became an almost artistic experience. The humans read the space around them like musicians reading a complex piece of music, responding to subtle rhythms and patterns that Taemin was only beginning to notice. After 2 hours of careful navigation, Bo-Ram's instruments detected a strong signal directly ahead. "There," he said. "Federation ship definitely in distress. Their quantum signature is fluctuating, which means their power systems are failing." Through the glowing clouds of the nebula, they could see the outline of a large ship. The Deep Survey was twice the size of the Lucky Strike, with the sleek design and advanced technology that marked it as one of the Federation's newest exploration vessels. But it was tumbling slowly through space, clearly out of control. Deep survey, this is the rescue vessel Lucky Strike, Yunwoo called over the radio. Please respond. The reply came back weak and full of static. Thank the stars. We have been trapped here for 6 days. Our navigation systems failed completely, and we cannot find our way out. How did you find us so quickly? Experience, Hyunwoo replied simply. What is your situation? The Federation captain explained their predicament. They had entered the nebula to study its unusual properties, but the ionized gas had damaged their sensor arrays and navigation computers. Without their instruments, they were completely helpless. They had been drifting randomly, hoping someone would find them before their life support systems failed. We can guide you out, Hyunwoo offered, but you will have to follow our lead exactly. Your computers will not be able to help you in here. How can you navigate without instruments? The Federation captain asked. Our most advanced systems cannot penetrate this nebula. Different approach, Jin-A replied over the radio. We do not fight the nebula. We work with it. What followed was one of the most challenging navigation exercises Taemin had ever witnessed. The Deep Survey was a large, heavy ship designed for long-range exploration, not for the delicate maneuvering required to escape the nebula. Its captain and crew were skilled professionals, but they had been trained to rely on computers and instruments for everything. Ginny had to teach them how to feel their way through space. She guided them through a series of exercises, showing them how to sense gravitational changes through the ship's hull, how to read the subtle signs that indicated safe passage versus dangerous areas. Do not trust your instruments, she told them. Trust your ship. Feel how it responds when you change direction. Listen to the sounds the hull makes when you encounter different types of space distortion. Borum worked with their engineer, showing him how to jury-rig their communication systems to detect the quantum signatures that could guide them home. Federation equipment is too precise, he explained. It filters out the small signals that are actually the most useful for navigation in areas like this. The escape from the nebula took 4 hours. Several times the Federation ship started to drift off course and Jin-A had to patiently guide them back to the safe path. But gradually, the crew of the Deep Survey began to understand what the humans were teaching them. When they finally emerged from the nebula into clear space, the Federation captain's voice over the radio was filled with wonder. Incredible. We have the most advanced navigation technology in the galaxy, but we were completely helpless in there. How do you do it? Practice, Yunwoo replied, and a different way of thinking about space. Your computers try to map everything perfectly, but space is not perfect. It is alive and changing. You have to learn to dance with it instead of trying to control it. As they escorted the Deep Survey back to safety, Taemin realized that he had just witnessed something revolutionary. The humans had not just rescued a ship, they had demonstrated a completely different philosophy of navigation. One that treated space as a living environment to be understood, rather than a problem to be solved with. Technology, the Federation ship represented, everything that was advanced and sophisticated, about galactic civilization, but in the nebula, all that sophistication had become a weakness. The humans, with their intuitive methods and improvised equipment, had succeeded where the most advanced technology had failed. For the first time in his career, Taemin began to question whether there might be better ways to navigate through the galaxy than the methods he had spent decades mastering. 3 days later, Taemin stood on the bridge of the stellar wind as they approached the Kepler 442 system. The medical supplies had been delivered successfully, and the colony's health crisis was over. But Taemin's own crisis was just beginning. Everything he had believed about navigation had been challenged. The humans had shown him that space could be navigated in ways that seemed impossible, yet worked better than traditional methods. He could not stop thinking about what he had seen. Captain, Du Young said from his pilot station, we are receiving departure clearance from Kepler 442 traffic control. They want to know our return route. Taemin looked at the star charts displayed on his navigation screen. The safe-mapped routes back to Federation space stretched out before him like familiar highways. Every danger was marked. Every shortcut was calculated. Every variable was accounted for. But now these routes looked different to him. They looked rigid and lifeless, like paths carved in stone rather than living passages through space. Captain, Du Young asked again, what course should I set? Before Taemin could answer, Nari announced an incoming message. Sir, we are being contacted by Captain Hyunwoo on the Lucky Strike. The human captain appeared on their main screen, smiling as usual. Greetings, friend. I heard your delivery was successful. The colony medical officer sent a message saying you arrived exactly on time. Yes, Taemin replied. Thank you for your guidance. We could not have made the journey without your help. It was our pleasure. You learn quickly for someone trained in mapped navigation. Jin-A was impressed with how well you adapted to nebula flying. Taemin felt a strange warmth at the compliment. Captain Hyunwoo, I have been thinking about what I learned in human space. Your methods are remarkable, but I do not understand how they can work consistently. How do you train new pilots? How do you ensure safety without standardized procedures? Hyunwoo's expression became more serious. Those are good questions. Would you like to see for yourself? We are always looking for experienced captains who want to learn our methods. You could stay in human space for a while. Fly with different crews, see how we really operate. Stay in human space? Taemin repeated. Why not? You have a good ship and a skilled crew. There is plenty of work here for independent traders, and you would learn navigation techniques that could change how you see the galaxy. Du-young and Nari looked at their captain with surprise. They had been planning to return to Federation space and resume their normal trade routes. I need time to think about this, Taemin said. Of course, but do not think too long. Space is always changing, and the best opportunities do not wait for careful planning. After the communication ended, Taemin's crew gathered around him. They had served together for many years and they knew their captain well enough to see that something important was happening. Captain, Nari said carefully, are you considering staying in human space? I am, Taemin admitted. What we have seen here challenges everything we know about navigation. If the humans are right, if space really is alive and changing, then maybe our traditional methods are holding us back. Du-young's four hands gestured concern. But Captain, human methods seem dangerous. Flying through asteroid fields without proper calculations, navigating nebulas without instruments, these things could get us killed. Could they? Taemin asked. We flew through that asteroid field and survived. We escaped from the nebula safely. The humans have been using these methods for decades and their safety record is actually better than the galactic average. Nari tilted her head thoughtfully. That is true. And I have been thinking about something So-min said, about how our navigation databases are always years out of date. How many times have we encountered unexpected dangers because our charts were wrong? Too many times, Taemin agreed. Remember the solar storm near Vega that nearly destroyed our engines? The charts showed that area as safe, but the storm had been building for months. If we had been using human methods, we would have detected the early warning signs and avoided the danger entirely. They spent hours discussing the decision. De-young was worried about abandoning tried and tested methods. Nari was curious about learning new techniques. Taemin found himself caught between his old certainties and new possibilities. Finally, he made his choice. I am going to contact the Galactic Navigation Authority, he announced. I will file a formal report about human navigation methods. His crew looked surprised. What kind of report? Nari asked. Taemin took a deep breath. An honest one. I will recommend that the authority study human techniques and consider incorporating them into standard navigation training. He activated his communication system and began composing his report. But as he wrote, he realized that his words could not capture what he had really learned. How do you explain the feeling of flying through an asteroid field guided by intuition? How do you describe the experience of navigating a nebula, using senses you never knew you had? Instead, he wrote about results. About the successful rescue mission that should have been impossible. About navigation techniques that worked in conditions where traditional methods failed. About a different philosophy that treated space as a living environment, rather than a collection of obstacles to be mapped and avoided. When he finished the report, he read it over carefully. Then he made one final addition. Personal recommendation. Captain Tae-min of the merchant vessel Stellar Wind requests permanent assignment to human space for the purpose of learning advanced navigation techniques. This assignment would allow detailed study of human methods and provide valuable experience for future training programs. He sent the report and then turned to his crew. I have requested permission to stay in human space and learn their methods properly. This is not an order. You are free to return to Federation space if you prefer. Du-young and Nari looked at each other, then back at their captain. We have been flying together for 10 years, Nari said. If you are staying, we are staying. Du-young nodded agreement. Besides, I want to learn how Jin-A flies through asteroid fields with her eyes closed. That could be useful. 3 months later, Taemin stood on the observation deck of Crossroads Station, watching ships come and go. Some followed the careful, predictable patterns of traditional navigation. Others moved with the fluid grace of human pilots who had learned to read space like a living language. His own skills had improved dramatically. He could now sense gravitational anomalies through his ship's hull, detect quantum signatures with improvised equipment, and navigate through conditions that would have terrified him a year ago. More importantly, he had learned to see space not as a collection of fixed routes, but as an ever-changing environment full of opportunities for those willing to adapt. So-min approached him, carrying a data pad with his latest evaluation scores. "Your progress has been excellent," she said. "Ready for the next challenge? What do you have in mind?" "There is a new nebula forming near the Galactic Rim. Completely uncharted. The Federation wants to send a survey mission, but their computers cannot plot a safe route through the surrounding stellar debris. They have asked us to guide them." Taemin smiled. 6 months ago, the idea of navigating through uncharted space would have filled him with fear. Now it filled him with excitement. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning. This time, you will be the lead navigator." As Taemin prepared for his next mission, he thought about the message he had received from the Galactic Navigation Authority the week before. They had approved his extended assignment and asked for regular reports on human navigation techniques. More importantly, they had announced plans to establish an experimental training program based on his recommendations. Change was coming to the galaxy. The old certainties about mapped routes and computerized navigation were giving way to a new understanding of space as something alive and dynamic. And Taemin, who had once believed that every route could be mapped, had become one of the teachers of a navigation method that could not be mapped at all. It could only be lived, one journey at a time, in the endless dance between pilot and space that the humans had mastered. In a galaxy where every route was mapped, they had found something better: the ability to create new routes wherever they were needed, guided by understanding rather than charts, by adaptation rather than rigid planning. The stars were calling, and for the first time in his life, Taemin was ready to answer without knowing exactly where they would lead him.